In a bustling card shop, 30-year-old Sosaku Kamafuda makes his final, glorious move, pays the mana cost, drops Demon's Dragoon like a thunderbolt, and unleashes a full-on assault until his opponent's life points crash down in audible shock. Then he slams his hand on the table and declares, "It's over," rebels in a win his 8th victory in 10 matches. And he's riding an ecstatic rush he calls brain juice, yelling that it feels insanely amazing to get that thrill the right way through card games. But his friends aren't buying it. One mutters that their skills have gone rusty from being away so long. And even though Sosaku shoots out a quick apology, his face is still glowing with pure joy. Still grinning, he pitches the idea that since that tournament with his old friends was pure fire, it's time they all start showing up and playing together again on a regular basis. Food snaps back to reality as his friends lay out the hard limits of the real world. One frets over travel costs and a furious wife, and in other states, it's a pain to bounce back to their hometown just to deliver cards. Still high on the moment, Saku brags about how turning the tables feels, and then he gets shut down fast, because screaming like that is embarrassing for guys in their 30s. As he trudged home alone, he couldn't stop replaying the reality of it. All his friends had scattered, married up, and basically graduated from card games, while he was still stuck at home, living and breathing the same hobby. And yeah, he had to admit it, they were real good friends for coming back just for this. At the dinner table, his meal finally kicks off right between his parents. His mom wastes no time, launching into that conversation deck of hers again, and he feels the familiar lecture hit. Sosaku's already 30, so she tells him to stop messing around and get married soon. It's the ultimate power move-a-marriage hunting meta-beat deck that crushes every single one of his rebuttals. His mother just sighs like, "Guess there's no choice," while Sosaka glares at his food, staring into the void, thinking, "Marriage? For a card-gaming man-child still stuck at home? Yeah, that feels straight-up impossible." Hands him an envelope stuffed with 220,000 yen and tells him to use it for a matchmaking service. Then it hits him like a wave, and his brain instantly starts doing the math on how many fresh card packs he could buy with a fortune like that, before he snaps that idea away. He argues with his mother about the massive sum, swearing he can't take it, so she just calmly sips her drink, tells him it's okay, and reveals the money was meant to come from somewhere else, leaving him totally baffled. The explanation sliced through his confusion with chilling precision, and when she said she sold every card in his room, his eyes went wide with instant horror as it all finally landed. A terrifying realization hits, and he bolts to his room praying she's not serious. He freezes in the doorway, staring at the bare shelves where his collection used to be. The bare used to be every last card is gone. He climbs those stairs into the void, and memories slam into his mind how he started collecting back in elementary school. And then it hits him like a gut punch. His whole life's passion, his entire collection, was sold for only 220,000 yen. Then it all narrows down to one special card, the heart of his whole collection. Asterisk, Demon's Dragoon. Ask. His battle partner feels absolute until his mother's voice slashes in, telling him the buyers pick cards by weight, just like used clothes, and that he should have checked online. Then she says all that's left is his deck. He drops to his knees, sobbing that it wasn't just a card, it was his youth, and she sold his things without permission. He drops to the floor in utter defeat, wondering if this is really it, if it's time to hang it up. Then his eyes catch his deck case, and he realizes one last card was left behind in his Demon's Dragoon. He stared at the few cards his mother left him, relief sparking up, then crashing hard into confusion as he picked up one card in particular, staring at Otherworld Summons, not recognizing it at all and wondering if he'd ever even owned a thing like that. Suddenly, the card exploded into a blinding flash, and he shouted in shock, utterly stunned at what was happening. His eyes went wide with terror as that brilliant light blasted through his vision. An invisible, irresistible force grabbed him and yanked him forward right off his feet, and a choked scream ripped out of his throat as he got dragged into the light. A tiny stack of cards slipped from his grip and smashed onto the wooden floor, echoing through his suddenly empty room. The whole rush of movement died in an instant, and he landed in a strange, dusty wasteland thick with the stench of dirt and wild beasts. His mind screaming, "Where am I?" as his senses reeled from the foul air. To steady himself, he looked up and a massive shadow swallowed the light. His blood went cold when he spotted a towering, pig-faced monster staring him down. It grunted and sniffed the air, staring straight at the shock of an arrival in front of it, while that brutal stench and the monster looming there left Sosaka frozen, wondering if any of this was even real. He screams and clamps both hands over his head, frozen in pure disbelief, as the massive orc-like beast erupts in a deafening roar, and then, from behind, another monster latches onto him, its brutal hand crushing down on his leg. Instantly, he's yanked off the ground and hung upside down by his ankle, and the creature's brutal grip dangled like nothing. Panic screaming through him as he realizes this nightmare is real. His cards are already gone, and now that gaping maw is waiting to swallow him. One desperate thought hammers his brain. He can't die then, as his plea echoes. One lonely card slips from his pocket and tumbles toward the ground. Saku's Camponi drops like a meteor through a blinding swirl of light. Terror grips his face as he yells he won't die. And right beside him, one plain, blank, rectangular car tumbles through the void too. He drops to his knees, eyes bulging as the memory of that tusked orc creature crashes back. Then horror hits him hard. This was the exact moment it all started. That was the moment his faithful encounter with another world turned wild, when he finally squared up face to face with a gigantic, shadowy beast and gained his new partner. As the chaos in his head crumbles, the world snaps into focused stormy clouds hanging low over a wild, endless wilderness, and right at the center, a towering ancient tree that looks like it's seen everything. It bursts open, and boom, an endless wall of thick forest stretches right out to the horizon. Deep in this sprawling forest, there's a tiny, rustic settlement, rows of worn, weather-beaten wooden buildings huddled together like they've been there forever. Saku, shirtless and slick with sweat, wipes his brow like he's done fighting, gasps that the one job is finally over. Then after a quick breather on a stump, he springs back up, grabs his tools, and starts plotting the next moves, patrolling the area and patching up the barricade. This hidden, fortified little compound deep in the forest is now his whole life, his second day in this twisted new world, and somehow he's still alive. In the clearing of that abandoned village, he'd stumbled on his lucky break. Then he sucked in a deep breath and braced himself for the grind waiting ahead, and right from his hand he flicked out a single card showing a brutish, battle-scarred orc, and as he spoke that name like a promise, he started the summoning, betting everything on its raw power. In the blink of an eye, the card monster erupted into existence right in front of him, a hulking orc with a crude, heavy blade in its hands, proving that his unique power, card materialization, was no joke. He laid out exactly what his power could do to his new, familiar monsters would pop out of cards and fall in line with his orders. Dove the orc's belly and barked his first command: hunt down every other monster nearby and smash them to pieces. At the command, the orc lunged into the woods, and before long, its razor-sharp eyes caught movement ahead, a pack of werewolves hiding between the trees. With guttural snarls, the werewolves exploded forward, smashing straight into a brutal, ferocious assault. The orc slammed into their charge without a flicker of doubt, and its cleaver screamed through the air, cutting one beast clean in two. As the creature hit the ground, its body shattered and turned to dust, dropping several fresh cards behind. That was just another side of his power. Every monster he wiped out could be captured like that. After the dust settled, he sifted through his spoils and found 3 werewolf cards. And as he scribbled in his journal, the truth hit him: this world's monsters were way too unevenly spread, and he'd better plan around it if he wanted to survive. He stood shoulder to shoulder with his massive companion, staring at the road ahead, and blurted out when he'd ever get to go back, only for his resolve to snap into steel. He swore he'd live no matter what, then claw his way back to his original world. Rage sparked in his face, eyes blazing with iron resolve. Because he wasn't just coming back, he was going to reclaim every single card that had been sold. Lost in his own thoughts, he felt the orcs tense up out of nowhere, ears twitching as they stared toward the tree line. Then he snapped, "What's wrong?" and followed their gaze into the thick woods, wondering if something was stalking them from deep within. His instincts nailed it deeper in that same forest. Two young women tore through the trees, gasping in pure exhaustion as they sprinted for their lives from an unseen stalker. Something monstrous smashed through the bushes behind them. One of the pigtail warrior women snapped her head back in panic, while a mage bellowed for Chaco to run left as a towering, horned giant ogre barreled closer. The beast towered over them, and Chaco, the mage exhausted to her bones, finally admitted it, then demanded what they should do next. Her companion wouldn't fold, vowing they'd survive no matter what. Fresh fire blazing in her eyes, she screamed a desperate order into the sky. Tackle it, or, and if they tried to cry, the answer came back instantly. Saku's orc erupted out of the trees and slammed into the ogre just in time. The two women froze, staring in pure disbelief. Then Saku stepped out from behind them, and the truth hit him hard. He could understand them. When the warrior barked, demanding to know who they were, Saku caught every word perfectly. The orc hurled its full weight into the giant ogre, and the bigger beast lurched backward on impact. So Saku stared in disbelief, his thoughts sprinting with questions. Was Chaco really that orc, and how the heck were monsters this strong living so deep in the forest? He watched his orc slam that giant ogre's massive club down with a crushing block, the impact rattling through the entire forest like thunder. As the two behemoths grappled, he clung to a card with his heart pounding. This was his ace. The orc was the strongest card, second only to the one he shared with his partner. The two adventurers stared, while the mage shot him a hard look, confused why he was even waving that card in their face. He locked eyes with the towering ogre, and a grim truth hit him like a punch. This beast was stronger than every card he had on him, and he had no clue what move to make next. With resolve burning in his chest, he spun toward the two women and told them about an abandoned village nearby, then asked if they could take care of it, while he swore he'd find a way to stop the danger right in front of them. His confidence hit them like a shock, especially the warrior, wondering if he really had something stronger than a giant ogre. Then the orc kept the line standing, and Sosaka just stayed calm, telling them it wasn't a problem, because he knew his partner was the strongest. When the ogre bellowed his challenge, he shot a brand new card into the air, his trump card, the power he hadn't shown yet. With everything on the line, Sosaku Kamafuda snarls as he readies his trump card, right as a hulking giant ogre looms over the female mage and female warrior, its monstrous bulk throwing a brutal shadow as it winds up to smash. The beast swings that monster club and smashes it down, but Saku plants his feet like nothing can move him. Then he calmly reaches out and drives a blow straight into its stomach. He bellows his partner's name like a command, and the air itself answers Damon's Dragoon. Tementuan Tueli. Before anyone can blink, the creature fully materializes. Its armored bulk slams into the ogre's strike, blocks it dead, then looms over the stunned monster like a nightmare taking charge. Osaku leans in and breaks down the creature's power. Pay the mana cost, and it'll blast a target monster with damage. Then he snaps the order, incinerate them. It roars like a weapon coming alive, then blasts its ultimate move, Unlimited Judgment. A monstrous beam of pure destruction blasts out from the demon's dragoon and smothers the giant ogre in seconds. Boom. Gone. Two women stare in stunned silence, and Sosaka leans in, like, according to the rulebook, once he's summoned, his dragoon gets resistance to destruction. The ogre gets obliterated, and all that's left is one blazing, glowing card. A female mage snatches the card, studies it hard, and squints at the ogre image like it's some kind of spell tag. Did Soku just summon a monster? As her mind races straight toward the wild idea that he might be the legendary summoner, she and her companion sprint to Sasaku, firing off, "Are you okay?" He stays hunched over, gasping like the last push might have torn the air out of him, then admits that calling the demon's dragoon drained him dry, because every high-end card hits you with a brutal price. Meanwhile, the mage just stares, completely thrown off by what he's saying. After he finishes his little speech, he flops flat on his back, claiming he's wiped out and begging them to handle the rest, while the warrior snaps in fury at the nerve of assuming she'll haul him. snarling whether he really thinks she's got the strength of a gorilla. He sprawls on the ground as one woman spots the damaged Maju monsters hit this place, and their invasion is surging fast. The other nods hard and says they've got to hunt down the labyrinth now. No waiting. Even while he looked out cold, Sosaku's mind snapped awake. Dungeon hit his thoughts like a bell in the dark. He jolts awake, and there's a brand new face hovering over him. A young woman with short light hair leans in, asks if he's awake, and introduces herself as Otome, the magician. Nearby, the swordswoman Chaco lets out a sharp scoff, hissing that they're suddenly indebted to him, until the female mage with the staff gently snaps her back for going too far. And right then Sosaku feels it. His head is resting comfortably in the mage's lap. He shoots a look up at the mage, and the mage blurts that Chaco was the one who carried him, only for Chaco to spin away, snap at him to stop with the useless talk, and declare to everyone that he's an outsider. Still, Otome grins and cheerfully blurts out her secret mission. She and the others came to hunt an unexplored labyrinth. Choco erupts in rage, screaming that it was supposed to stay hidden, but Otome just smirks, taps a finger to her lips, and shuts her down with a single look. She leaned over Sosaku, her hand soft on his head, then flashed a confident grin and declared, "You're a legendary summoner, come join our team." He froze when she slid even closer, her voice turning soft as she begged for his help and cooperation. Then, that sudden, way too intimate closeness threw him into a spin. Because his brain kept scrambling, why was she calling him a summoner, and why was she right here in his space? Mind reeled. This felt exactly like a video game trap, the kind that's rigged to ruin you. A spike-laden booby trap fired, and the ceiling started creeping down, inch by inch. He could do nothing but stare upward, blank-faced, utterly crushed by it all. Kako's razor-sharp voice tore his peace apart, barking at Otome to shut down her weird seduction plan. Sosaku jerked upright and tried to steady himself, pushing the talk back with a question about the labyrinth. Otome just pointed out to a giant tree far off, demanding how he could possibly have missed it. Far off, their quest waited, an enormous tree stretching its canopy toward the sky, the legendary labyrinth tree. Right at the base of that massive trunk, tucked in among the twisted roots and wild undergrowth, sat a dark mouth of an opening and entrance that plunged deep underground. This labyrinth, an entire other world, snared countless adventurers desperate for instant fortune. And deep inside it, hulking one-eyed cyclopses loomed like nightmares waiting to tear their hopes apart. Chaco spelled out their exact mission. This wasn't some random labyrinth hunt. They were after a place that nobody had found yet. While Sasika chewed on the idea of another world, the tank-like armored knight just stood there, silent, unmoving with the group. He snapped back. To the instant he got yanked into this world, 1 second, he was gone, and the next a black card had slammed into his hand, its surface etched with the words, "Otherworld Summit." That memory hit him like lightning off him. Even said labyrinth can mean an otherworld too, so the two are tied together somehow. The female warrior snapped back fast, claiming established labyrinths are ruled by ruthless forces, which is why total strangers can't step in. That's why they're hunting a brand new entrance. She kept her eyes locked on Sosaku, admitting their labyrinth hunt went nowhere until the forest turned deadly and monsters surged out, and that's when the summoner finally showed up and saved them. He stared, totally baffled, trying to figure out what they meant by summoner, and the warrior shut it down fast, explaining that a summoner is someone with the gift to call monsters to the world. That explanation snapped me right back to the moment he stood face to face with a colossal armored dragon. And it hit me, monster. Summoning is the rarest talent anyone can have, the kind that turns a person into a true legend. The truth hit him like a crushing weight. Oten's voice shook with awe and raw desperation as she stared at him, stunned that the legendary summoner was actually real, actually him. Their hunt for the labyrinth would finally work. His mind spun in total denial. No, he wasn't some legendary summoner. He was just a card gamer, an ordinary guy, and the whole idea sounded flat out impossible. But deep down, he still wanted to help. He tried to refuse, but the words jammed in his throat, and the moment Otone saw him hesitate, her expression crumpled. She apologized for asking something so unreasonable, like it was just too much trouble, and she admitted it wouldn't even help a summoner like him. His hesitation clung to the air, and the female warrior and the young magician stared back wide-eyed, completely startled. Those troubled faces clung to him like a curse, and he stood alone, tearing himself apart inside, haunted by one brutal question. Was it really right for a grown man to turn away and refuse help to a girl in need? He'd finally made up his mind, and then he blurted his answer. "All right, I'll help you." The warrior's hard, stern attitude snapped instantly when she stared back at him, stunned beyond belief. He locked eyes with their hopeful stares and thrust his card forward like it was a weapon, then declared, "My name is Kamafutas Sozakoi. I'm a legendary summoner." Right then and there, the legend of the old man ignited. Then Sakukama Fuda got ripped out of his world and dropped into a brand new one, where he unlocked a wild power. He could turn monsters into playing cards. Thanks to that monster summoning talent, two young women rushed up to him, called him the legendary summoner, and begged him, please, would he lend them his power? He listened to their plea, figured his power must be like a summoner from their world, and nodded. "All right, I'll help." He introduced himself as Kamafuda Sosaku, head held high as he bragged he was a legendary summoner, and he had zero clue that this one careless agreement would come back to unleash major trouble later. Mario charged into an abandoned village, and a mage asked if he was using it as a base, but the warrior shut her down, fast saying he wasn't running things at all, he was just trespassing there without permission. Even so, the mage couldn't help but gawk in disbelief, shouting that it was wild he managed to live here by himself and rebuild the whole place, especially with deadly forests closing in on all sides. She hailed him as a real summoner. The praise for summoners hit so hard it shook him to the core. He stared at one of his cards and suddenly understood that his power to turn monsters into cards, something he'd always assumed was normal here, might be way bigger than he ever imagined. That creeping dread hit harder when the warrior demanded to know why he was there. Was he skulking in the outskirts to hide from the kingdom? And in that moment, it slammed into him. Could being a summoner mean he'd stepped into something way darker than he ever imagined? Then he leaned in as the legend of the summoners got told, monsters of insane power who could face off against whole night orders and royal armies, and whose strength was so brutal it could topple nations. Legend. The mage leaned in with wide, earnest eyes and told him straight up why he had to stay hidden. If the kingdom ever sniffed out his talent, they'd label him a prize to be dragged into subjugation, and that gut punch hit Sosaku that the truth felt like a fist crashing into his chest. It was all a misunderstanding, but trapped in this mess, he couldn't exactly argue or claim. So for the moment, he swallowed his pride and played along, begging them to keep it all hush-hush for now. The cheerful mage snapped into action, seizing the moment and pressing hard, asking him to lend his power just this once while the warrior beside her stayed stone silent. Her smile vanished as realization hit, and she realized she was trapped in something she couldn't control. He shot in to stop the conversation before it spiraled, then blurted that he wasn't a summoner at all, just a mage. But the mage twisted his paws as a sign and demanded to know why he couldn't help. Right before he could even explain, the warrior exploded with fury, demanding to know who dared make that call on their own, while she shouted that she wouldn't accept this old man at all. Her rejection wasn't just words. She launched the bigger mage into the air with one hand, like it weighed nothing, brushing off his furious protests as she held him up, and Saku could only gawk, frozen in disbelief at the girl's monstrous strength. She raised her companion overhead, and the warrior snapped, furious, asking why they'd gotten themselves into a mess where they had to beg some old man for help, while the mage blurted, desperate and helpless, that there was no other choice, because they were trapped at a dead end, and only an ally could save them. Rage lit up her eyes the moment she faced her companion. She snapped, why the mage was spilling secrets about their labyrinth hunt to some stranger, then brushed Sosaku off as a sleepy old man who'd never help in a fight. But the mage just smirked and dared her to try him herself. As the warriors backed off, the mage clamped her in place and spun to Sosaku, apologizing on the spot. Then she explained her partner was just desperate to see his power firsthand. Her apology fizzled into a bold, formal request, and her face lit up. She asked Summoner Sama if he'd be willing to spar with the warrior so everyone could finally see his real power. A sudden proposal blindsided both Susaku and the warrior, leaving them completely dumbfounded. Moments later, they were shoved into a busted clearing like the duel was about to ignite any second. Sosaka's stomach dropped as he realized just how badly this spiraled. He was a card gamer, not some fighter, and the idea of battling a real person felt insane. From the sidelines, the mage grinned and egged him on, practically giving him the green light to crush the warrior without mercy. His opponent showed zero hesitation. She shoved the old man to hurry and summon a dragon or any monster at all, slamming her enormous greatsword forward and bragging that she'd cut him in half. Sosaku faced her challenge and stopped fighting the inevitable, because in this world he was just a summoner, and his familiars had to do the heavy lifting. He weighed his choices, fanned out his cards, and instantly shut down the idea of summoning Damon's Dragoon as way too much power for this moment. His eyes locked onto her weapon, and that massive greatsword looked like a nightmare to wield. Without a second thought, he snatched a single card from his hand, ready to fire back. He lunges the card forward, chanting for his pick a werewolf familiar. With a brutal roar, the Lupin beast rips into existence, all muscle and menace towering over the battlefield. Sosaku snaps that he's using this to feel out the match, and both the warrior and the mage lock in, eyes sharp and focused. One creature erupted into a swarm copy after copy, fanning outward until the lone warrior was boxed in from every side. From the sidelines, the female mage clocked the whole game in one glance. She saw Sosaku's plan clearly when she spotted Chako's massive greatsword, then realized he'd unleashed the werewolf's blazing agility to scramble her mind and crash into her before she could recover. With the plan finally set in motion, Sosaku snaps out a vicious command to his familiars: tear the target apart. One werewolf rockets forward with claws bared, but the warrior doesn't flinch at all, just stands there, calm and unreadable. She keeps her cool as she warns the beast not to play with her. Then bam, she rockets into motion, heaving that massive greatsword and slashing through the air so fast it's almost impossible to track. And Sokka can only stare in stunned disbelief, wondering if a summon can really get wiped out that easily. Right as the blow lands, the warrior disappears from her spot and rockets back into view in a streak of pure speed. And Saku just freezes because she crossed the gap in an instant, like inertia doesn't even exist. The word accelerate slams into his mind, and he can't help wondering, does she have a special power too? That unspoken question snaps into clarity when the female mage steps in. She tells him that since he can summon monsters and she can wield magic, other humans have their own special gifts too, called talents. This is how her power ticks. Chako can accelerate, snapping her own speed forward and backward at will, and that means she's suddenly a perfect match for that clunky greatsword. Even the mage can't help but wonder what Sosaku will do next. Sosaku Kamafuda stays stone calm, cards poised in his hands, and sizes up the chaos, because taking his time in a duel with the swordsman is a death wish, and he has to figure out which card will smash the speed-increasing move. His thoughts get ripped apart the moment the female warrior rockets forward at insane speed, vanishing the gap in an instant. Then she screams, "You're in range now." The weapon swings down and a massive creature rips itself out of a card, its heavy axe slamming into the strike at the last second. The warrior gets hurled backward, shocked by the brutal stop, and then she realizes that charge wasn't the acceleration skill she thought it was. That perfect block buys him a breath, and in it he starts cracking the whole situation, figuring out his power's rules and realizing monster control can run two ways: commands inside his head, or a voice he announces out loud. He weighs every trick in the book. Vocal commands work best when you just need a clear, simple order, but mental commands demand razor-specific details before they'll even take effect. He whips his focus back to his opponent, watching her react to the summoned orc. Then he wonders if she can trigger her powers without saying a word, or if flipping between vocal and silent casting completely changes what her magic does. Meanwhile, the warrior studies everything she just did and snaps to the conclusion. He's already cracked her plan. She realizes her shouted acceleration hits harder, but it also exposes her, a trick she only saves for the moment to finish it. And when she hears no command for the orcs to intercept, doubt sparks in her mind. What if he can give orders without a word, too? Her eyes sharpen as she cooks up a new plan. If he's like her, he'll have to bark out vocal commands at the exact worst moment. Then it clicks. In that tiny window, if she smashes his unguarded body, she snatches the win. She drew her blade with ruthless confidence, smirking like she already owned the outcome. This fight felt so easy, it barely deserved her pride. Saku's confidence was impossible to miss, so he studied her stance, sword up and ready, while she kept her eyes on York, like he wasn't even there. From the sidelines, the female mage clocked her head-on style, matched it with her own, and threw a sharp taunt. What did the summoner plan to do? He weighed every option, his face hardening into a grim scowl. The orc moved too damn slow. No way he could dodge every one of her blows. So he knew the only way to win was to freeze her movements completely. His brain sprinted as he stared at the few cards left in his hand. No way could he summon another giant monster for a pincer attack. So he snapped his eyes shut and dug through his memory, hunting for anything, any past win that could shatter this deadlocked stalemate. The voice from his past slammed into his head back when a car shop owner sat him down and said, "In car games, you've got to make the impossible feel real." Teaching him that crucial trick. Make something that doesn't exist look like it's right there. The shop owner kept right on teaching the younger Sasaku, laying out a clear example to prove his point. But the kid still didn't seem to get it, at least not yet. He spun a past game showdown, one jumbo golem with 5,000 power versus a fast hyena with 3,000 until the shop owner revealed the trick. He played a gigantification card from his hand, doubling the hyena to 6,000 and flipping the whole fight. He said the whole story boiled down to one thing: the brutal power of a bluff. Then he leaned in and asked young Sosaku, if the enemy has more cards and mana than they need to unleash a game-changing spell, would you still rush in? He made it crystal clear: by making someone fear something that isn't even real, you can lock their choices down tight. And he practically demanded Sosaku remember it, because one day, that trick would save him. He clutched the cards tight, and gratitude flashed in his eyes. Turns out the old shopkeeper's idea still hit the mark just as hard as it did back then. With that new confidence blazing in him, he swore he could finally see the path to victory, then thrust a finger ahead and roared for his orc to charge while across the field. The female warrior snapped into action, sprinting forward with her blade raised and ready. She slammed into the creature's charge head-on, snapping its weapon away like it was nothing, then laughed at how clueless her opponent was. Like an orc's brute strength could ever bully a girl like her, claiming her acceleration could hit any incoming strike from any angle, and daring the beast to come at her full force. With the two stuck in a clash, Sosaka roared a fresh, razor-specific order. Jump to the left, and from where she stood, the female mage stared, her mind screaming, "What are you doing?" It looked like they were just rushing head first like total fools. The shouted command hit the female warrior like a punch. Her eyes snapped wide as her mind scrambled to accept the shock. The female mage snapped into it and caught the one detail that mattered: this creature moved wrong, totally off from the spoken command. And in that split-second confusion, she realized the warrior's guard was finally down. Rage curdled into shock as the warrior stared. How had the orc ignored the command and slammed its foot down instead of leaping? Thrill was muscling her off course, certain she had a gap. And before the opening could close, the warrior surged forward to crush her with pure speed. But her focus got yanked away. The second Sosaku came sprinting straight at her, eyes blazing with total determination. And then it hit her hard. He was the summoner. He barreled forward, smashing the gap between them. And the female warrior just stared, stunned, because in her eyes, the distance was still way too wide for any strike to land. His eyes sharpened with intent as he barked one command, and the acceleration slammed into motion. The warrior's eyes snapped wide with panic as she clocked her miscalculation. swearing at her own blunder while bracing for impact. But then it hit her. This strike wasn't coming from the summoner at all. His orders, his command, even the way she was told to trust him, it was all just another lie. The orc, fired up by the command, shot forward like lightning and slammed its massive fist into the ground. The blast missed by a hair, but from her safe distance, the female mage watched the wreckage unfold, because she knew a direct hit would have meant instant death. She barely slipped out of that devastating strike, then dropped to one knee on the cracked ground, staring up at the summoner and calling him Chaco, demanding to know if he'd finally admit her victory. He said nothing, just snapped his tongue with a sharp click, pure annoyance blazing through him. He calmly admitted he'd somehow won with zero special powers and no real combat strength, and the female warrior shot him a furious, accusing glare, demanding to know if he truly couldn't use acceleration. He just nodded and said, "No, I can't." Then he dropped his secret tactic. He surged forward on purpose, barking the acceleration command like he could command the whole battlefield, all to throw her off and scramble her movements. Then he confessed his very first command was a total bluff. He'd been mentally telling his summon to ignore his voice from the start. The female warrior snapped with rage, calling his tactics cheap, and swore she could beat him with ease if he'd just attacked her straight from the beginning. Even after that blow-up, she steadied herself and swallowed the truth. Sometimes you just get beat. End of story. With a resigned glance, she admitted she was outmatched and recognized how good he really was. Watching their exchange, the female mage clocked just how razor-close that battle was. Sosaku nodded along, knowing it was a narrow win, while the female warrior stayed planted with her arms crossed, still seething over that near miss of a fight. She kept her eyes locked on the fight, zeroing in on the one turning point. Sosaku the summoner had never once let Chaco take the perfect move. Her mind raced through the female warrior's style. Chaco's tactics were simple, brutal, and powered by acceleration. Smashing hard with the great sword, so in a plain brawl, she'd had the edge, but Sosaku stepped in and twisted the match with mind games, forcing her to doubt, overthink, and hesitate instead of moving on instinct. The mage cut her assessment short because Choco was never allowed to move freely every moment, forced her to react instead of fight the way she wanted, and with her style taken away, defeat became inevitable. While the defeated warrior stood there in stunned silence, the mage quietly brushed a finger over her chin, mulling everything over honestly. Her interest in that man had started and stayed rooted in only one thing at first: his raw skill as a summoner, but now it hit her ration. He could be way more useful than she ever expected, and with that serious look, she realized his presence could force her to scrap everything and rethink her whole plan. Her thoughts got shattered when the warrior snapped his arm towards Sosaku and barked, "What's your name?" Sosaku whipped his gaze back, stunned by the sudden question. "Kamafuta Sosaku." He spat his name out, and the warrior muttered that it sounded ridiculous. Then a mage snapped back hard, demanding a real introduction. But the warrior dug in her heels, refusing to play along and insisting she'd never bother with some formal recital the way she did for Oto. She brushed off his argument and shot back that he'd be joining them to search the labyrinth, then warned him straight up if he tagged along, she'd work him like a horse. He recoiled in shock at her demand, but the mage lit up like she'd just heard the best news, hands clasped, voice booming that with the legendary summoner on their side, their power would skyrocket 100-fold. The warrior began to stammer that she'd already introduced herself, and that was when Sosaku spotted the opening he needed to finally set the record straight about what he could really do. He hesitated like his mind couldn't catch up, then carefully asked what a labyrinth search actually meant, and exactly what they expected him to do. The mage laid out her plan: conquer a labyrinth buried deep in a deadly forest. Sure, it could happen with his help. So both women wasted no time and formally demanded he fight beside them. Then Sosaku got hit with a brutal truth. Their assumptions were set too late to fix, and now he was trapped in a monster-choked forest with a fight he never asked for. With a scope in hand, the female warrior scans ahead and spots their target up high. The whole party peers down at a twisted, root-choked opening in the earth, the labyrinth's mouth waiting below. Sosaku Kamafuda slams a hand to his forehead, wiped out by the brutal journey. He spent an entire day just hunting down the entrance, and he still remembers how his companions leaned on him, death gripping his shoulder with every twist and trial as he led the way. Unease crawls up as he stands there with the two women, blurting that he doesn't know if they'll be okay from here. The female warrior snaps her fist tight, eyes blazing, then declares, "That's it, we're moving." Down in the labyrinth's black throat, a low guttural growl rolls through the air, and two sharp, menacing eyes glint in the darkness. That moment yanked him back to memories before they even left, when the female warrior snapped with fire, swearing that monsters always crawl near labyrinths. So they had to be in this forest, and they needed to start searching right then. The female mage pushed back with a far safer plan: go slow. Scan the ground step by step, and map everything as you move. Because she flat out admitted it could take at least a month. The warrior exploded at the delay, yelling that other adventurers would steal the chance right out from under them, while the mage stayed calm and snapped back that dying unready beats bravery's real test, because wisdom acts with courage, but fools charge ahead with recklessness. Rage tore through the calm as a furious charge flew. Coward, but the mage just shut her eyes and shot back. Simpleton, before things could spiral again. So Saku lunged between them, arm up to stop the clash, and cut in with a hard, "Excuse me," before he could even finish. With a grin, he proudly shows the map he's been drawing since they arrived, confidently pointing out exactly how well he knows every twist of the forest around the village. It keeps going, and now they're staring at a map packed with clues, local paths, even monster hotspots, and it might be the key to finding that lab. The female mage gushes, still awestruck by the summoner like always. But the female warrior snaps with pure frustration. Why didn't he mention a map sooner? Gripping the map up high, Sosaku stays ice calm and demands they cut the bickering. They keep trekking, and he lays out every step of his plan. Sure, the map doesn't name the labyrinth's exact spot, but it screams with danger, packed with monsters stronger than anything they've faced. He swears the closer they get, the more ferocious those beasts will turn, and the closer they creep, the closer they land right at the entrance. Just when they think they're getting through, a massive barefoot brute crashes to the ground right in front of them, cutting off their entire path. A whole horde of ogres stands guard, and their muscular horned bodies block the only way forward, while a grim-faced female warrior watches and knows they'll have to hack their way through to reach the entrance. But right there in the middle of the brutes stands something worse, a towering shape, wrapped head to toe in a ragged, dark cloak, glowing eyes cutting through the shadows, and when the female mage locks eyes with it, her face tightens like she just realized exactly what it is. The female warrior snaps that beating these guardians is the only way to reach the entrance. No turning back, and with that she drives everyone forward. The female mage lifts her staff while the three companions brace themselves for the battles that are about to hit. So Saku, Kamafuda, and the rest of the expression squad lifted one lone card and declared it time to move exactly as they'd planned. The female warrior shut him down with a brutal scoff, swearing he had no plan at all. And then she tore into motion, unleashing her own power to speed up the whole fight. She said her talent was control over her own speed then. As an ogre charged at her, she got ready to prove it. She darted forward like a streak of lightning, then threw down the gauntlet one-on-one. She never loses. No one can match her speed. With one blinding slash, she took the ogre's head clean off, and with her throat roaring, she declared she had no plan and would smash the horde by herself, because only 3 of them were left. Her win lasted barely a breath then, as she loomed over her downed enemy. A hulking ogre slammed a giant club toward her bare back, and from far away, the female mage started chanting. Summoning, the mage snapped out her incantation and slammed reinforcement magic into the grass right under the warrior's feet, then blurted a warning to Chaco she'd pushed too far ahead. The warning hit at the perfect second, then the ogre's club came crashing down, not on the warrior, but on a rock-hard invisible barrier forged out of reinforced grass, and the impact shattered their weapons and stunned the creature. The last ogres dropped to their knees in front of the shadowy cloaked stranger, begging for 2 more. Then Sasaka Kamafudo, from afar, lifted a hand and snapped one calm command. Then he thrust out a glowing card and poured his power into a blazing incantation. Giant Ogre, summon. And right in front of the kneeling ogres, a towering red-skinned warrior with long white hair and brutal horns tore out of thin air. Huddled in the lean of the tree, the female mage finally got at this. Was the summoner's real talent, and the proof was right in front of her. When the creature finally tore itself out of the card, it was way bigger and far more terrifying than any wild one she'd faced. A summoned giant ogre tore the air apart with a deafening roar, and just by standing there, it struck terror into its own kin, while one smaller ogre could only shriek as that massive warrior towered over it. It didn't hesitate. Its massive blade came down in a brutal arc, carving through the smaller creature with sheer, overwhelming power. Once the lesser ogres were wiped out, Sosaku snapped his focus to the last, silent threat. He counted the battlefield, just one enemy left, and dread hit hard. Because this wasn't some ordinary foe. This one felt unstoppable. Right at the labyrinth's entrance, the king ogre blocks their way, and Sosaku with the female warriors can only stare, stunned, as this mountain-sized monster looms over them, its snarling face screaming the truth. This isn't just an ogre, it's their leader, the strongest of them all. A fearless female warrior refuses to be intimidated. She screams that they shouldn't be scared, then declares they've got to strike first, and she explodes forward in a brutal, power-charged dash. She whips out an accelerated strike, but the king ogre just casually lifts a giant shield and slang! The hit gets swallowed instantly, leaving the warrior frozen in disbelief, baffled how he even managed to block it. The force of the hit slams the grinds across the shield, sparks blasting everywhere. Yet the massive ogre doesn't even blink. From afar, the female mage spots the defense mover magic, and the female warrior finally realizes her blow wasn't just stopped by brute force. Before she can even flinch, the king ogre slams the ground. Boom! A chunk of rock erupts upward and plants itself right between them, showing off total control of the earth. The female mage spots an even worse truth. King Ogre's got 4 arms, and 2 extra smaller limbs jut out from its back, each gripping a weapon. And Shigermaze realizes this nightmare is far more dangerous than they ever expected. With the odds crushing them, Otom asks if they should fall back then, so Saku steps in, shuts the idea down, and promises he'll cover them for a while. He orders Otom to stick to the plan they hammered out the day before, and for a split second, a campfire memory flickers proof they were ready. He tells his party he finally understands what each of them can do, and that'll let him craft the perfect tactics. Then he demands intel on the monsters lurking deeper in the forest, and the female mage cuts in fast. They're strong, and they're straight-up cunning. The cunning shows up in a bunch of ways. When the monsters get stronger, their powers multiply, and their tactics get sharper, sneakier, and way more devious. With that in mind, Sosaka's mind snaps to Otome's rare gift. He realizes her magic could be exactly what they need, turning her talent into a huge advantage for them. She leans in and demands his verdict on her skills. So he tells her her magic is wildly adaptable, the kind that could become the key to their whole strategy. And he points out her strengths in earth and grass, plus that nasty dark magic that clings to objects. Then she straightens up, grinning, and brags that her own breakthrough power is just as incredible. After digging up every last clue, he grins and declares he's finally ready. He can craft a real strategy, built to take down those monstrous threats. The scene snaps back to the present. His plan kicks off. He shouts that he'll buy time until Otom's preparations are done, then points his summoned warrior, a towering ogre in samurai armor, at the king ogre and orders a full charge. As Sosaka's warrior charges ahead, Sosaka locks eyes with a towering monstrous king ogre, and their wills slam into each other across the battlefield. The king ogre stops the samurai's twin blade attack cold, with one brutal, massive hand, then grabs the samurai's head with the other, his crushing strength threatening to snap the armored fighter in an instant. With those many arms moving like a blur, the creature effortlessly snapped aside every samurai strike. So from far away, Sosaku's stomach sank as horror hit him. It had dodged every single blow. His gut sank into full-blown alarm when the King Ogre ditched the samurai and barreled straight for the rearguard. Saku finally saw the trap. These monsters don't just fight, they hunt the helpless summoner. With no summons left to call and the next phase not yet triggered, panic hit him hard as the King Ogre ramped up its charge. As the colossal beast thundered forward, a streak of motion zipped past its head, then the female warrior slammed down hard. Furious, she'd aimed straight for its neck, hunting a decapitation, but she missed by inches. Her attack fizzled, barely nudging the ogre as it surged forward. And when she flicked her eyes back to Sosaku, she caught her breath. He'd still charged in despite his injuries, and some hard-earned respect finally hit her. Before Sosaku could even speak, a tiny object slammed into the King Ogre's forehead. Wham! And the giant erupted in a deep, gut-wrenching roar of pure annoyance. The giant's furious eyes snapped to the projectile's origin. And there stood Otome, cool as ice, calmly confirming her throw as the monster's full attention locked onto her. Once she'd snared its attention, she started to taunt it, beckoning it closer and declaring that everything was ready. Then the King Ogre lumbered forward with a crushing step right toward her. It lumbered after her, its hulking mass smashing through the land as it chased her into the debate's prepared area. The colossal beast crashed straight into the waiting trap, and Hotel Magician's safe at a distance grimly confirmed it was the perfect fit. Then, with a sharp command, they drove the blade through the ground under the king, and Ogre crumbled, dropping him head first into a deep pit. His plunge crashed to a brutal stop at the pit's bottom there. A summoned Sarai Ogre was waiting, and it drove its twin blades up into the King Ogre from below. With the massive beast finally cut down, a card popped into existence, proving the King Ogre was officially captured. Once the danger was gone, Otome stood there like a hero and called her pitfall plan a total win. Then Saku Kamafuda gripped the fresh card in his hands, his face finally giving way to tired relief. He then leaned into the female warrior's headwind, slapped on a fresh bandage, and asked what they should do next, while Otome calmly explained how her trick of dragging the ogre into the earthen grass pit had worked flawlessly. And even with the injury, the warrior, so flustered by his care, swore she'd done everything she could. Her non-stop drive ignited a heated argument, so the female warrior snapped that they couldn't afford to rest and had to rush into the labyrinth right now. But Otome stayed calm and shot back that the warrior was the most battered, and since the entrance was finally clear, they should turn back for the time being. The fight didn't cool down. Warriors yelled that she should march into the labyrinth, while Otome slammed the brakes with non-stop warnings, and as Sosaku watched his crew, calm settled across his face. He finally got it. They'd found the labyrinth at last, and the real nightmare was only getting started. The female mage and the female warrior snapped their eyes to Sosaku and Kamafuda at the same time, both firing off accusations. "Tell us who's right." Annie jumps back, blushing in panic, stammering that he shouldn't be yanked into some kid's fight or forced to choose on the spot. Fumes burning inside him. Why do they only treat him like an adult when it suits them? The female warrior snaps that since he's an adult, the choice is his to make. Two women lock eyes and the air turns electric with unsaid tension. The right of between girls and whatever answer he tries to offer, everything is guaranteed to spiral into pure hell. That warning sparks the warrior's fury. He lunges in and drives a brutal strike home, screaming for him to die. He stumbles back, finally grasping how a careless maybe could have gone this wrong. But he still can't shake the thought. Would any answer, even the right one, actually have changed the outcome? The thought locks into his mind. Mess up one time, and one of them might actually end his life next. His whole demeanor snaps, eyes hard, jaw set. Then he declares the argument is flat out wrong, because with enemies closing in, they can't afford to waste strength on pointless infighting. Maybe they should grow up and stop bickering. But a brutal truth hit them hard. In this world, numbers aren't just math, they're power. As the two women kept steaming, an analogy snapped into his head. Teenage girls were like volatile demon cores. One little spark and boom, critical mode. He immediately choked back the thought, praying it would never escape his mouth. He pauses in silence, then finally speaks up, saying he can't let the team fracture over something he said. his back to the warrior while he stares into the rain-slick entrance to the structure below. Patience had already bolted with a dismissive sigh, and she snapped that she'd drop it, then set off into the labyrinth alone. That decision blindsided him completely, he snapped, yelling for her to wait, panicking that walking off alone was way too dangerous as she started to leave. He abruptly spun around and demanded an answer. Why had he gone silent if he really saw even a sliver of her talent? Her voice sliced through the space between them, sharp as a blade. Frustration finally snapped. She screamed that she never should have trusted anyone, then swore she'd take down the floor boss all on her own. Her explosive outburst hit like a slap, and he flinched before he could stop himself, because dang, teenagers could snap into full boil so fast. Without another word, she tore down the long stone staircase into the pitch-black dark, and behind her, he panicked blurted out what they were supposed to do and pushed that they should chase her. Mage calmly told him to ignore her, saying Chaco was just sulking and tough enough to take a hit without dropping dead right away. Yet her ice-cold logic still made Sosaku grimly wonder if every girl from another world was built like this. He slammed his hands over his face in frustration, kicking himself for not just saying it straight that splitting their forces was a stupid mistake, period. The female mage stared at him, and finally got it. His worry wasn't an act. Her answer blindsided him. She said his style was straight-up strange, because most magic users obsess over their spells and never think about teamwork or the bigger game plan. With a shining, starry-eyed grin, she lavished praise on him, calling him Summoner Sama, and swore it was incredible how nothing like normal magic users he was. Stunned, he only managed a small, grateful, "Thank you." Her whole vibe changed the moment she softly cupped his cheek, and then she said, ever since they met, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Not just different from other magic users, he didn't fit among ordinary people either. He wasn't just special, he was extraordinary. He froze the moment her fingers brushed him, then she called out, "Hey, Summoner Sama!" Her face tightened with focus, eyes blazing wide as she leaned in and demanded, right then and there, to know who he truly was. Her message hit him like a thunderclap, fired back the question. Panic clawing at his mind as he sorted every weird thing she must have caught. The odd clothes, the bizarre summons, the talismans he carried, stuff this world had never even heard of. Her eyes pinned him in place, dread creeping up his spine as he panicked over what to say. Then the truth hit him. Just admit he was from another world. But right as he stalled, a small, knowing smile flickered across her lips. That tiny pause was all she needed. Her expression dropped into a dark, menacing shadow, one eye flashing as she said she finally understood his weak spot, and Saku immediately felt the whole world shift, sweat breaking across his skin. Her eerie tone lingered in the air, but the female warrior stepped in right away. She cupped Sasako's face gently, told him everything was fine, swore she wouldn't press him, and promised to keep the whole secret locked up. Leaning in close, cheeks warming, she breathed out that she'd cracked his secret right into his face. He just stared, baffled, while she laid out her belief that sharing secrets ties men and women closer, and with a cozy smile, she told him they should get along from here on out. Her attempt at a mature, romantic move totally threw her off. She couldn't stop flustering. Sosaku, beads of sweat forming, apologized on the spot. But watching a kid try so hard to play grown-up made a fresh wave of secondhand embarrassment crash into him. She jolted back in shock at his silent judgment, and he immediately scrambled to explain, stammering that he got why she wanted to look more mature for her age, even as his own embarrassment practically burned through him. Her cheeks blazed a deep red, and the way he saw her made that whole look feel strangely off. She shot her a warm, calming smile and said, "It's totally fine. No need to fake it. Kids can just be kids, and that's more than okay." His try to reassure her backfires. Instantly, Major Roos weeps off her calm like paper. Face burning with fury as she screams at him to shut up, hurling old man at him over and over. Her rant keeps roaring as she snaps that she's done calling him Summoner Sama, and she's switching to Sosaku, like he's the old man of the village only. He sputters that 30 isn't old, and she shoots back that yes, it absolutely is. His protest gets drowned in scorn, and the female warrior tears into him too, knocking the fight right out of his spirit until he crumples to the ground in despair, bitter that this new world dares to call him an old man, while she jabs at him and hurls the cruel nickname, Sujasima. He flicks his eyes between them, totally baffled, and blurts that he's wondering if girls from other worlds burn that. Fast then he turns to the female warrior, asking why her rage flared up so suddenly. She pushes harder, cornering him with a sharp question. Did you really not notice something? She whirls to him, and snaps that the female mage's rage flared the moment he did nothing, and didn't answer just because that Oji-sama stayed silent. It slams into him like a punch. He finally gets it. The female mage thought his silence meant he wasn't interested, and that's why she started her. He lets out a guttural cry, getting wrecked by her blunt logic, and the female warrior barrels forward, pressing her advantage, forcing him to explain why he stayed silent when he had a take, and even teasing whether he was just hiding behind adult self-preservation. A grim look settled on his face as her words hit him. He knew she was right, and the worst part was that his silence, pure self-preservation, had paved the way straight into this disaster. He dropped to his knees before the female mage and declared he was heading into the labyrinth to apologize. The moment hit her hard. She looked stunned, then told him he didn't need to go that far. Like the warrior was only sulking, he glanced back at her. His resolve didn't budge for a second, and he snapped that this just wouldn't fly. As an adult, he had to make things right and atone for what he'd done. Meanwhile, the female warrior pushed into the massive labyrinth alone, yawning at the emptiness and muttering that this dungeon wasn't a big deal as she marched deeper inside. Her voice snapped through the air, and she pointed out that every monster they'd run into was a joke, right down to the nearby slime, and the warrior nodded, already thinking, I can wipe the first floor clean by myself. The mage's voice snapped into a new tone, admitting she'd trusted them right into a raw nerve. The warrior's expression turned stone hard as she swore she could fight by herself and would never rely on anyone again. Her defiant words rang through the cavern, and from the crags and darkness, gaunt little figures crawled into view until a goblin's cruel face appeared, making her flinch on the spot. She brushed it off as some pathetic weakling and swung her blade like it was nothing, then panic hit when she realized her back was pinned to a solid wall and there was nowhere left to dodge. Her ambushers step out of the shadows, 3 gaunt goblins clawing crude gear, a spear and a bow ready to lunge the moment they catch her off guard in that cavern. From far away, they started picking her apart, and she snapped, refusing to let them run the fight. So she flipped the script, slammed her acceleration skill, and charged in with one explosive, swift burst. She exploded forward, a blur of a massive greatsword, charging straight at the goblin archer to crush it under raw, unstoppable force. Her charge slammed to a disastrous stop right there. In that cramped passage, the tip of her great swords punched into the stone wall and buried itself deep in the rock. That sudden stop jolted her hard, and in that one exposed second wham, another goblin's rock slammed into the side of her head. The hit blasted her backward, and she tumbled hard across the uneven dirt, while the goblins shrieked like they'd already won and rushed in to swarm her. She crashed into the rubble, stunned and unarmed, just as the creatures surged in to finish off their helpless target. Gasping for breath, she scrambled into the deep shadow under a huge rock, clinging to the lie that she could still take this on alone. She had to. First, stitch herself up. The brave, the manish before the goblins' attacks could ever find her in the dark. Crouched in the dark, she's crushed by despair. Tears spill down her face, sliding through grime and blood from her wounds as her trembling lip won't stop shaking. Her anguish hardens into one brutal thought that won't let go. Why can't I get this right? Her thoughts slam back to that old talk with Sosaku, and she remembers clear as day back. Then, too, she'd already known she had no reason to let herself rage over it. She remembers it crystal clear, watching Sosaku stay stone silent, and instantly she jumped to the worst conclusion. He didn't care about her, and it hit so hard she couldn't rein in her reaction. Her memory crumbles, and she's left alone again in that freezing dungeon corridor, cursing herself like she always manages to blow everything up from the very start, convinced this desperate mess is all her fault. As regret keeps crushing her chest, the goblin's chatter turns into a roar, and out of the darkness a patrol steps forward, cold, cruel faces sweeping the passage like they own it. Her head jerks up at the sight. This isn't the same patrol from before. It's bigger now, way more of them. And her mind scrambles as she searches for where these reinforcements could have burst from. Her gaze locked onto a horrific trophy raised by one of them, a human skull strapped to a massive bone so clear it hit like proof. This was an organized war party. Deep in the cavern, the goblin war party surged forward until a new nightmare strode out in dark robes, gripping a staff topped with a human skull, while the goblins flanked their leader, chanting in sharp, rhythmic bursts that boomed and echoed off the stone walls. That sickening sound of despair crawls through the labyrinth, and from her hiding spot, the female warrior spots the leader's face, death pale, horrifying, and framed by wide, unblinking eyes that lock onto her like a spotlight, freezing her blood with terror. Deep in a shadowy cavern, the female warrior is trapped in total danger, pinned against a rock wall, face set in grim fear, while a swarm of gaunt goblins and their skull-staff shaman closes in fast, grinding her chances down to nothing. Elsewhere, Soseku Kimafuda clenches his jaw with grim determination, and a bead of sweat drips down his temple. Above him, on the stone steps, the female mage grips her staff and keeps glaring, impatiently pushing the old man to hurry. Now they plunge into a colossal, rocky labyrinth, and the female mage lights up that they've finally made it inside, then immediately grabs Sosaku and grills him about how he plans to find Chaka. She swivels toward him, voice slicing through the air with accusations. She's calling him out for having zero plan, zero strategy, and for acting like a kid instead of a grown man who owns his choices. And when frustration finally boils over, she snaps. So is every word you throw at me just meant to hurt? Before comparing him to a jackknife, he pulls a card from his blazer like it's nothing, and with calm confidence explains he'd been planning to reveal it, showing it's a werewolf. The female mage watches, wide-eyed, as he lays out his big plan. Use the wolf's sense of smell to track their way through the maze. He spots a game-changing detail. When the monsters get turned into cards, they keep their special powers. But the cards only show the creature's name and a picture. As she keeps talking, she demands the summoner figure out what that card can do. Then Sosaka just grins, lifts it to the sky, and blasts out the command. Werewolf, find Chako-san. Summoning hits boom, then a hulking werewolf tears into existence in front of them, towering and ready to maul. And Sosako exhales in pure relief because his deduction actually worked. The moment it's here, it raises its snout and starts sniffing the air, hunting on instinct. Feel the pressure of their mission. If Chako, the female warrior, got trapped in a tight labyrinth with monsters, her massive great sword would slow her down, so he had to push them to find her fast, because one hit from something powerful could end her. He clutched the werewolf card in his hand, and it felt like the answer, something that could seriously help crack the search. Meanwhile, deep inside the cave, the female warrior squared up and locked eyes with her enemies, while a swarm of goblins, led by a shaman gripping a staff, surged out of the shadows. The shaman's grotesque mask twisted into something inhuman as he barked commands in a harsh, guttural voice no one could understand. Watching the scene unfold, the female warrior felt something off about the shaman. She'd never seen a goblin like this before. Then her gaze snapped to the greatsword sitting just a few steps away, and she decided she'd snatch it fast. Just as she was about to move, the shaman barked another brutal command. Every goblin around him snapped into a vicious, tensed-up stance, and the female warrior went rigid on the spot, eyes blazing wide with panic. Her shock snapped into focus. The shaman wasn't guarded by run-of-the-mill goblins at all, but by towering, muscle-packed brutes that made the smaller goblins look tiny. She froze in total disbelief, her brain scrambling to understand what she was seeing because the goblin had somehow ballooned to an impossible size. Before she could even blink, those monstrous goblins came barreling in way faster than they had any right to be. One hulking brute swung a fist the size of a boulder, and she barely dodged. The hit smashed the ground flat where she'd stood. The attack slammed her into the ground, and she gasped as searing pain tore through her whole body, so brutal it didn't feel like a goblin at all. More like something straight out of an orc's fight. As she tried to recover, the truth snapped into place. This wasn't some natural transformation at all. and she realized the shaman must have pumped the goblins full of enhancement magic. He grabbed that weakling and, with his dark arts, warped it into a full-blown monster. Frozen in pure terror, she had no time to react. Then a massive hand slammed onto her leg and yanked her off the ground like it weighed nothing. She shrieked and thrashed against the iron grip, but it might as well have been cement. Her escape was hopeless, her strength falling apart, and all she could think was the same wild question. How did something once so frail grow this unstoppable power? The goblin yanked its grip tighter, those massive hands clamping down on her head, and when the crushing pressure started to rise, one horrifying thought swallowed everything. Was she really about to die here? In the clutches of an overgrown goblin? She hung limp in the creature's grip while it spoke with ice-cold calm. And that goblin basically taunted the whole moment, saying that if it had been patient and kept its rage in check, this deadly end never would have happened. Its words meant nothing. To her, tears poured down her face. Her eyes blazing with pure terror, she tried to make sense of one crushing thought. She couldn't die like this. Not here. And she needed someone, anyone, to save her. Her quiet plea snapped into a full-blown internal scream, begging for help with everything she had. In the blink of an eye, her plea struck back. The goblin's head snapped clean off, and its huge body crumpled to the ground. Right beside it, the female mage stumbled into view, eyes blazing with shock as she blurted if Sosaku really made it in time. The warrior woman gasps for air, relieved that the danger is gone. And there it is in front of her, dead on the ground, the muscular goblin reduced to a headless corpse. That leaf is gone in a blink, and she whips around to Sosaku and his werewolf buddy, realizing the beast they crushed earlier followed their scent all the way here. "Trust me," she says. "Leave the rest to me." He strides ahead with his werewolf partner beside him, and he flat out shuts down her offer because protecting kids is for adults. Then he snaps a command and orders his creature to move forward. A mangy wolf rockets into the battle, all claws and fangs, ripping through the goblin's ranks with ruthless speed. Suddenly, the beast jerks back and its whole body locks up like it's being crushed by pain. And Saku just stares, stunned. How in the world is his powerful summon getting tossed around by foes this weak? The female warrior snarls at him, calling him an idiot, then yells the truth: these aren't ordinary goblins at all. They've been magically enhanced. His gaze locks onto the source, a goblin shaman, rocking a skull-top staff to supercharge its allies, and Sasaka's like, not enough. So he slams down another card, and a white-furred female werewolf materializes. The warrior freezes, stunned, like, what's another summon supposed to change now? He scoffs, saying more weak monsters won't ever win this fight. And the two werewolves brace themselves as a brutal horde of empowered, muscle-bound goblins charges straight at them. Charge slammed headfirst into overwhelming force, then two werewolves, one dark and one light, snapped into a flawless pincer and smashed a single goblin flat in a blink. He stared at the outcome, grinning like he'd always known it would land exactly as he predicted, while the female warrior could only freeze, wide-eyed with sheer shock as everything flipped in an instant. His prediction clicked the moment he spotted one crucial detail. The werewolf monster came with two totally different card illustrations, and he realized they weren't separate at all. They were a matched pair, meant to be combined to rip away the cover and reveal their real hidden effect. This combo unlocked their real power when the werewolves moved together. They became one brutal, unstoppable unit. Their combined might blasted a shockwave through the goblins, ripping apart the magical cards that kept the enhancement going, and Sosaku crumpled down on a wave of relief because, yeah, his wild prediction was right, even if he'd secretly never tried anything like that summit before. She spun toward him, calling him Soji-sama, and the truth hit her like lightning: if they could take down the caster, this enhancement magic would get shattered, and the spell that's supercharging the goblins would be wiped out for good. Even the shaman became their next target. And Sosaku knew the road to victory was right there: beat the goblin shaman, and the whole nightmare gets wiped out. He snapped the plan into motion right away, pointing straight at the enemy leader, and with one sharp command, he drove the werewolf forward to rip into them. At his command, the white werewolf shot forward in blinding flashes, and her claws ripped straight through the goblin shaman, tearing its robed body apart in an instant. The moment the shaman's essence drained away, a brand new card snapped into existence in his handproof. He just snagged it. With the danger wiped out, he whipped his gaze to his companions and snapped, half proud, half defensive, whether they'd only shown up to mock him. The female warrior erupted in rage, her voice trembling with raw emotion as she snapped. So you think I'm here to make fun of me for being dumb like losing control and nearly dying as some joke? I know I'm an idiot, so go on. Blame me as hard as you want. He didn't throw blame. He snapped back with the same fire, grabbed full responsibility, and admitted it was his fault before offering a real, heartfelt apology. He kept going, pouring out the real reason behind his apology. He admitted that when she asked him to decide earlier, he froze and stayed silent. And he confessed he'd been terrified to take responsibility, scared of getting hurt, until his hesitation finally shoved her straight into grave danger. He sank into a deep bow, confessed that he'd truly failed as an adult, and apologized to her again with raw, heartfelt sincerity. She just stood there, eyes wide and mouth shut, completely stunned and lost by everything he did. Her thoughts slammed back and forth, and she couldn't make sense of what was happening. Why would a grown man be bowing and apologizing like that, like it was just normal? The moment he did it, it totally shattered everything she thought she knew about the world. Her mind spirals into pure confusion. Because in noble society, an adult never bows to a child, and that rule is unbreakable. She can't wrap her head around why this man is doing something so pointless. Right nearby, the female mage clocks it instantly. Sasa, the Oji-sama, is slammed with status ailments confusion and stunned, and she knows this situation is about to go seriously wrong. The female mage whips her head toward her companion and demands she witness it. Two-feeling bowing with his head down in apology, then she leans in hard, pushing the warrior to admit it. Shouldn't she say something back? With her eyes shut, the female warrior finally admits it. She already knew, and then, with a flash of shame, she confesses she was wrong too. Her calm snaps in an instant. She barrels into Sosaku and screams that he's got no pride, bowing his head to someone younger. Then she spits that if this is how nobles act, they deserve to be laughed at, their lands trampled, and their clans erased, demanding that if he wants an apology, it better come with 100 cutting insults. Right when Susko's furious rant finally dies down, she exhales in relief. Grateful the chaos has cooled until a blazing magical sigil suddenly ignites on the back of his hand, and he recoils hard, stunned out of his calm. As searing heat rips through his right hand, he blurts out that it feels just like an overcharged smartphone burning bright. The burning sting finally eases up, and he flicks his eyes to the card he just grabbed, then squints hard, jolting as he realizes he can read part of the text now. He stands alone, staring at the card like it's staring back, then blurts out how he can suddenly read the text that used to be totally unreadable, wondering if some magic just boosted his eyesight. Maybe like a LASIK-style miracle. Suddenly, a voice with no body at all cut through the air, and he couldn't tell if it was a hallucination or something real. Then it boomed that he'd finally met the requirements to level up. The voice kept going, and when it announced he'd hit level 2, the sigil on his hand flared to life, blazing with the Roman numeral second, and it hit him like a jolt. He could suddenly read text he couldn't touch before, even though everyone swore nothing could grow past 130. The revelation slammed into him as he stared at his own hand, stunned and buzzing. Even as reality tried to break, he had leveled up at 30 years old. Saku Kamafuda, who's been grinding as a card gamer through his middle-aged years, locks eyes on the werewolf card in his hand, and it hits him like a lightning bolt. He can finally read the text, the words that used to look like total gibberish. He blurts out, half in awe and half in disbelief, "Wait, could I've actually leveled up?" He stares at the price and grimly admits it was worth it after tearing through that dungeon. He's leveling up fast, and now he knows reading the card text will blow his strategy wide open and turn every fight into something smarter. His mind keeps snagging on the cards he can't read, yet especially that work card, and he thinks, if my level climbs again, maybe I'll finally decipher them all. Then, snap, an ice-sharp voice rips through the silence and demands, "So why are you just staring off into space? Chaco, his warrior companion, speaks from deeper in the cavern beside Otome the mage, and she tells him to step up closer. When he finally looks their way, their statuses snap into his vision. Chaco, human, 1800/1200, and Otome, human, 1600/1000. Kako stands there and asks if he can read their human statuses, and straight up says it feels just like a game. Otoma's question hits him like a punch, and his startled reaction pretty much screams that she's right, he can see her status too, and that's when the truth lands. He's finally gained the power to see through them. The shock of this new power hits, but then he spots his own status, Kamafutasasaku, human, 300/200. His voice cracks in agony as he realizes he's pitifully weak, the absolute weakest monster. So there's only one move left. Crank it up and burst stream. Chaco watches, totally lost, as he suddenly falls apart, drops to his knees, crushed by the truth of his own weakness. Then Chaco blurts out his nickname, Sojizima, and orders him to snap into a battle stance. The warrior spots the lagging stragglers sticking close, and her companion snaps his gaze to the darkness. Goblins are crawling out of that cave, and a tiny horde spills into the light, with eyes glowing viciously from the shadows. The three of them lock up into a tight defensive line, bracing for the monster's coming charge, while Sosaku hangs right behind the two women who clutch the fries. Right as they brace for battle, Sosaku's sight snaps sideways. His brand new power kicks in, and suddenly every goblin status pops up, hovering right in front of them. He digs through the new info and suddenly gasps he can now see where every monster stands, and the shock hits hard when he realizes their strength isn't all the same. Then his eyes drop to the card clenched in his hand, and he wonders, if he turns a goblin into a card, does it get weaker? Since that's the whole point of leveling up, he zooms in on the card's details, and when he sees the attack power stamped at 500, his focus locks in. Right when he's stuck in his own thoughts, the battlefield erupts. She fumes, yelling that goblins keep crawling out even after they took down the shaman, and beside her the mage snaps a card into place, pointing ahead as he orders her summon to charge and attack. A lone goblin barrels past the women with a raised club, eyes locked on Sosaku, and it blurts out his name in sheer panic. As the goblin horde crashes in and swarms them, the female warrior clenches up, ready to fight, but the female mage just shrugs it off, calling them tiny fry with zero chance of winning. In the blink of an eye, that lone goblin and the dark festoon of their own rockets straight into the enemy lines and lands a thunderous hit, blasting several foes flying through the air. The moment her eyes catch that raw strength, the female warrior goes speechless. She gasps in disbelief, shouting, "How can this thing drop three at once?" Because up close, it just looks like any other goblin. While hiding in the distance and watching the clash, Sosaku suddenly gets it. His power lets him read far more than card stats because he can see the creature's live condition right on the battlefield. Then it hits. When he locks in on his goblin ally, power explodes out of it, and its attack strength blasts past double, all because it's surrounded by a whole crowd of other goblins. Now it clicks, the card effect finally makes sense. With that fresh confidence burning in him, he's convinced this is the road to victory, and he shoots a sharp command at his goblin. Press the attack. The creature obeys and smashes another enemy. But Sosaku freezes in horror. His goblin's damage suddenly plummets, and he realizes the more foes it kills, the weaker his monster becomes. He yells out an alarm for his goblin then. Right in the thick of it, the female warrior keeps battling wave after wave and snaps back at him, telling him to stop standing there looking like a fool. His eyes narrowed as the truth hit like a punch. This wasn't a weakness at all. It was the exact opposite. He looked back at every card he'd once thrown away as useless, and then boom, that same judgment came back, surging up through his card defect as the new option. He gripped that card with fresh confidence, ready to prove that real skill can carve a path to victory, no matter what tool you hold. Thrilling door to a whole new world of possibilities. That thought snapped him back to a phone notification level up, and just as it hit, his friend shouted his name, yanking him out of his trance. Back in the dungeon, everything suddenly zoomed to the female warrior and the female mage. They faced a hulking stone gate, half crushed and ready to fall, while the warrior, bandage wrapped around her head, pointed out that a wall had caved in, exposing what looked exactly like the floor boss's chambers. So Sok slipped in with a question. Wait, is this the fourth boss? And the female warrior snapped back that it was a dead end, but the next stretch ahead had to be the route to their target. The female mage leaned in and said the very bottom of the floor hides the floor boss, the most brutal monster of them all. And beating it is the only way to clear the floor. She pressed on with a grim warning. This floor boss was on a whole other level, and getting completely wiped out wasn't some far-off nightmare. Then a brutal vision hit the air. A rain-soaked battlefield littered with fallen adventurers. And right there in the aftermath was Saku. She whips her gaze to her companions, resolve ironclad, and the female warrior declares, "Of course we're taking on the boss. We came all this way." The mage nods right away, saying she's ready too, then turns to Sosaku and presses. "So what are you planning?" He stayed silent for a beat, then finally admitted the truth. He hadn't made it this far with any real purpose at all. His thoughts slammed back into the past. He always dodged the abandoned village's forest, hiding in the safe zone and picking fights only with weak creatures. Build up at the reason he ever leveled up at all. The truth snaps into place in his head. If he wants to level up for real and get stronger, he's got to hunt brutal monsters and earn battle-tested combat experience. That snap of truth jolts him back to the present. He's right there with his companions. Then it hits him. In that abandoned village, he never leveled up once. Now he finally gets. It's staying in the safe zone means he'll never get stronger with. With a fresh fire burning in his chest, he snaps around and shouts, "Let's go, I'm taking on the four bosses too." His companions trade a knowing grin, like they've just won the whole game as the warrior strides toward the chamber entrance. She can't help thinking the old man is playing weird, while the mage squints and decides he's kind of childish. He stared ahead, eyes blazing with fresh determination, because he wasn't just dreaming anymore. He wanted to get stronger, smash through his limits, and finally find out what he was really made of. A confident smirk snapped onto his lips as he approved the decision. One sharp, "Yeah," that said it all. Hand outstretched, he declared their next move: storm the floor boss and take this brutal new challenge head-on. Right in front of a giant vine-strangled stone door, the party slams to a stop. Every breath feels heavy with anticipation. Beyond that gate waits the floor boss, and Saku, Kamafuda at his side, flanked by his two companions, jabs a finger forward and roars. "The way's clear. Let's go." Before he can even take a step, the female warrior, fresh bandage on her forehead, barrels past him and shoves him aside with shocking strength. "Move! Get out of my way!" she roars, eyes blazing. "I'm going first!" She hammers her hands against the towering stone door, muscle straining as it finally groans and shifts. And right there, she declares her dream to the echoing chamber. Because she's taking the role of Dungeon Master. That outburst traced back to a conversation from before. So Saku gathered everyone and laid out the stakes, then demanded to know if they really understood what a Dungeon Master was. He broke it down. It's the title the first pioneer earns when they crack open the labyrinth gate, and with it come exclusive powers, including the right to keep others from entering. Once the next chapter paints the future, the moment a dungeon is uncovered, fortune chasers swarm in, and the whole area explodes with growth. It turns into a massive cash machine, where the dungeon master doesn't just run the place, they end up ruling the entire booming economy. He pointed straight at the door they were staring down, and then dropped the one rule that decides everything. If you want to become the dungeon master, you've got to be the very first to slam the dungeon's first layer floor boss. The female mage stared down, lifting a trembling hand to her temple in pure panic, and Saku clocked it right away, realizing that this massive prize was exactly why everyone wanted to grab the title. He understood her clan was begging for a revival. Then he cut straight to it. "Wait, are you from a noble family?" Then he demanded to know why she was letting Chaco steal the Dungeon Master title. And sure, he said it didn't hit him personally, but he couldn't hide how blown away he was that she'd read the situation so perfectly. Meanwhile, as they talked, the female warrior kept fighting, teeth clenched and grunting as she shoved those gigantic doors apart, burst through the doors and straight into a massive, crystal-bright cavern. This was the floor boss's chamber, glowing with wild, mysterious brilliance. Trailed by her, Sosaka scanned the stunning yet terrifying landscape, wondering if this really was the battlefield, and the female mage snapped back that the air was choking with magic, twisted into magic crystals, just as the female warrior ahead froze cold, sensing someone near. Her eyes snapped to the chamber's heart, where, on a pedestal of pure crystal, one massive egg sat like it was waiting to hatch destiny. As they stared, a thin cracking sound ripped through the cavern. Then a hairline fissure clawed across the egg's surface. The warriors froze, eyes blazing with anticipation as the shell split in a rapid spiderweb of cracks. When the egg-shattered shell finally broke, what crawled out wasn't some terrifying monster. It was a tiny, fluffy little creature that chirped softly. And right behind the warrior, Sosaku sputtered, "Wait, is this just a little bird?" The female warrior felt that same jolt shock first, then pure disbelief before blurting out, "Wait, can this tiny little chirping thing really be the floor boss?" She couldn't help wondering if its cute act was just a clever disguise to throw everyone off. In a violent burst of light, the little bird detonated with raw power. So the warrior, furious that it looked like a joke, snapped back and swore she'd never be underestimated, launching straight in with her sword raised high, ready to cut the creature down. Her strike lands, and instead of tearing the creature apart, it explodes into a blinding flash of light. She jerks back, eyes bulging with pure disbelief at what just happened. She stumbles back, eyes wide, completely thrown by the explosion. "What?" she whispers, stunned beyond belief, unable to piece together what just happened. From the blast's epicenter, dark smoke erupts as glittering crystal shards rain down, and the little creature is just gone, so she's left guessing. Did it get ripped apart, or did it self-destruct to the very last second? Her confusion snaps into fury, and she yells through clenched teeth, demanding to know if it was just a defensive instinct. After pushing all this way, only for the boss to self-destruct, it feels like a cruel joke, the most pointless ending to everything they fought for. She fumed like a storm in a bottle, snapping that no dungeon master should ever act like this. And as her rage finally boiled over, Sosaku shouted her name, desperate to catch her eye. Meanwhile, the female mage senses the world shift. She thrusts up her hand and feels the air crackle with power. And then she realizes the shattered magic crystals have turned the atmosphere into a raging storm of pure magical energy. Her warning snaps the whole room to silence. She says the ambient magic is being ripped into raw electricity, and from that chaos, something is starting to take shape. Because in the middle of the room, a dark sphere of energy crackles and thrashes, gulping down all the power around it. The sphere bursts open, and a surge of electricity stitches itself together until a huge, roaring beast carved from wild lightning fills the air. A creature made of pure energy burst forward and screamed a deafening, crackling roar, flooding the whole chamber with raw power. It's a giant beast of arcing lightning pulsing with brutal power, and the moment it shows up, the air itself starts to hum. When the danger hit, the female warrior rocketed forward and slammed her blade into the creature's crackling electric body. Ito based your chanting for grass reinforcement, or attack, and it was useless. The sword tore right through the thing's unstable shape, flashing through its flickering body as it reformed around the blade, shrugging off every hit. The female mage stared at the outcome, realizing her long-range spell couldn't touch it, and that her magic just didn't fit the creature's true nature. The female warrior cut her off mid-sentence, snapping, "What is that thing?" and wondering whether the little bird had somehow changed into it, while Sosaku kept his eyes locked on the moment, firing up his appraisal skill. His power lit up the truth. Razgri's Rex, the monster's real name. But the moment he tried to dig deeper, he hit a wall. Its level was way beyond him, and there was no way he could analyze it further. Their attacks bounced off uselessly, so she snapped her hands forward, blasted earth magic, and yelled for everyone to dive behind the wall she'd raised. She strained to hold the barrier together while that electrical monster smashed it from the outside. And behind her, Sosaku spat curses at his own weakness, raging that even after leveling up, he still couldn't do a damn thing to help. The creature roared, blasting another wave of raw energy straight into the magical shield. and the impact shattered it with a violent boom, cracks racing across the surface like a web. The female mage grimaced as the wall started to crumble, dropped to one knee beside it, and the female warriors spoke the terror they both felt, because that barrier might not hold against the assault. Her face hardened, a quiet determination locking in as she snapped her gaze ahead. She shot upright, massive sword at the ready then. Sako blurted her name. Chaco. And you could hear the alarm creeping into his voice. Her eyes locked onto her weapon, Durandal, and she knew this was it. This blade was her family's heirloom. A sword forged to slice clean through any magic. A memory slammed back her father in front of her, raising that massive sword, telling her that soon a bride would be brought from the outside, but this house and its lands were hers to inherit. Then he pressed the blade into her hands and called her Coco. Her eyes flutter shut for a split second as she recognizes Commander Mind, and she whispers, "Yes, father." She dug her heels in and raised a massive blade, the treasured Red Lotus family sword, and then swore that this weapon was a legacy her father entrusted to her with his own hands. Her mission was crystal clear. She vowed to restore her family's honor for her father's sake. And just as she braced herself, another brutal blast of energy ripped into Sosaku from behind. She poured every ounce of her grit into a thunderous roar, begging her father to fuel her power, then swung her massive greatsword straight into the crackling sphere of energy. The blade slammed into the electrical sphere with a deafening crash, slicing straight through its very core. With a brutal grunt, she forced her sword through the attack, and the electric entity jolted back like it had just been struck by lightning. After her strike, the lightning's power vanished completely, and Saku and the female mage just stared in stunned silence. So Saku blurted, "Wait, did you really slice lightning in half?" She looked them dead in the eyes and said their shock was right. No lightning, no magic, nothing could survive her blade, and as long as she kept cracking the enemy's magical power, she could take any hit. Hearing that, Sasaka crouched in his hiding spot and felt shame slam into him. He looked so pathetic, just standing there while this young woman took on everything alone. The female warrior plants her feet with her sword up, and the crackling Razgris blasts through the waivers in front of her. Then, its electrical assault finally fizzles out, and the immediate danger is gone. As the entity's power starts to fade, she spots the gap right as the attack finally stalls, so she fires back while the opening is still there. But just as she's about to lunge, the creature detonates in a blinding burst of light, its power surging again, while Sosaka, off to the side, stares with his eyes bulging in pure alarm. The female mage screams a warning, saying that blinding light is another self-detonation, and begs the warrior, "Don't you die, because if she wants that creature gone for good, she'll have to finish it herself." He watches everything crash into motion, and cold unease sinks in fast like, why are they so calm? He keeps wrestling with a theory. Maybe that first blast was just a defensive instinct, but it still doesn't explain why it roared back to life in a far bigger, worse form. His eyes cut across the battlefield and spot magic crystals scattered everywhere, each one throbbing with way too much power. Then a cold, awful truth hits him like a punch. He's figured out what this monster really is. Razor's Rex can drain its own life force to smash an opponent, then forces a brutal price to regenerate, and every time it comes back stronger by exactly what it paid, turning sacrifice into a terrifying loop of pain, rebirth, and power-ups. His face drains of color as the truth hit. He instantly clocks the pattern, reads the text, and realizes this is one of those moments where everything goes horribly wrong. He screamed a warning, face twisted with pure panic. "Shoko, get back!" He shouted, naming the thing's true nature, a self-destruct beast, and sealing the bond between them tighter than ever. She stood her ground, pulse hammering as her mind tried to crack the pattern, and she clocked it projectile power mixed with regeneration. His whole understanding traced back to * familiar game, and he remembered a legendary self-destruct card, a creature that detonates to blast its surroundings, then burns magic just to come back, and grows stronger by exactly how much magic it paid. Horror hit him hard as he stared across the battlefield. The real nightmare wasn't just the carnage, it was the cycle itself. because the creature was gulping down the shattered magic crystals from the ground to power its own upgrades. He felt horror hit like lightning. This self-destruction wasn't just worse, it was on another level, with power that kept exploding into limitless regeneration and endless stronger than before loops. Get away now, you're a. But his warning hit way too late. Then a blinding burst of energy detonated, swallowing the warrior in a massive explosion. As the blast's light started to die down, Sosaku shot his hand forward with grim resolve, barking orders to the female mage to tap into the lands, gathering magic. She stared back, stunned and worried all at once. At his command, a brilliant sphere of light snapped into existence, ripping massive energy straight out of the crystal-covered ground. He watched the mage start siphoning the land's magic, her staff poised and humming, while the warrior dug in her heels, face set like stone, as she stared down the very heart of the cataclysm. The moment it hit, a monstrous vortex of pure power ripped open the land, and that brutal cycle of self-destruction, rebirth, and getting even stronger was finally underway. A monster roar rips through the empty wasteland, and the blast's aftermath lingers, dust and raw power spinning like a hurricane, carving the ground up and scattering debris everywhere. The dust finally settles, and the female mage whips around to see Isekai'D Kamafuda, her staff still faintly glowing. "Are you okay?" she demands, worry twisting in her voice as she checks on their missing companion, Choco. The question hangs there like a threat, and the female warrior stares from just a few steps away, completely baffled, like she can't make sense of what she just heard. Her eyes lock onto a towering, beast-like monster kneeling on the dirt, and the thing, pure muscle and raw power, clutches its head like it's tearing in agony while she calls out to it, her voice shaky and unsure. The beast man's face twists in raw agony, his eyes clamping shut as a wild, strange energy starts pouring out of him. The female warrior screams, shouting, "Is Choco okay?" And then the creature's huge hand starts to crumble, breaking apart into dust and stone that slams down onto the ground. Seeing it, the warrior recoils in pure horror, hands flying to her head as she trembles. The female mage calls out, "What's wrong?" But Sosaku spots the threat and yells, "It's not safe, get away right now." He yanked them back to a safer distance and laid out why if that self-destruction shattered the magic crystal, then this whole zone should be drowning in overflowing magical energy right now. He locks on to the magical energy still hanging in the sky. Eyes wide as shock turns into a brutal new understanding, and when he finally speaks his dread, the words catch in his throat. As everything clicks, a blinding burst of energy erupts from the spot where the last creature died, and you can feel the air crackle because fear isn't over. It's a deadly loop. Self-destruction, regeneration, then an even stronger upgrade. He tells the female mage his analysis, saying that that first blast was the creature's absolute peak, and now that it's regenerated, its attacks are probably even nastier than before. After the detonation rips through the air, the creature shrinks into its tiny core form and gulps up the shattered magic crystals scattered everywhere, feeding its region as it claws back stronger every time it revives. It's a never-ending spiral of self-destruction and rebirth, an endless loop where the creature keeps detonating, regenerating, and coming back stronger every single time. Sensing the danger climbing higher by the second, the female mage yanks the distraught female warrior close and demands they run right now. Her eyes snap to Sosaku, where Choco's doubt hangs in the air. But he refuses to move, jaw set and resolve sharpening into something unbreakable. Right as the magic churns, a brand new figure bursts out of the swirling energy, an ultra-powerful, thick-headed warrior with spiky, wild hair. While behind him the ambient magic hardens into a massive, violent vortex, screaming that something far bigger than what came before is about to show up. A brand new creature fixed its gaze ahead, draconic eyes blazing with grim resolve, while a low growl rolled out from its throat like a warning. The pressure crushed the female warrior until she snapped, clutching her head, screaming that she was done, begging not to die, and shouting that there was no way she could face both the floor boss and her own master. The female mage crumpled in her sobs, snapped her eyes to Sosaku, and pushed them to retreat, saying the warrior had fully burned out and couldn't fight anymore. Sosaku's focus slid to the dungeon's massive, gated exit, locking onto it as their only escape. They could act, and right then, the little floor boss started hoarding power like a storm, compressing it into a crackling sphere of pure energy that pulsed with a truly ominous glow. With a bone-rattling shriek, the creature tore loose all its stored power in a massive, blinding beam straight at the dungeon's entrance. The blast slammed into the stone archway with brutal force, pulverizing it and dumping a storm of boulders from the ceiling until the passage was completely sealed. Saku and his crew froze when the escape route vanished. They stared at a wall of rubble, and it hit him like a punch. They were trapped, and right in front of them, Razgris Rex stood its ground, humming with threat. Then Razgris Rex exploded into motion straight at the four bosses. Not the party. Sosaku just watched the impact unfold, and instantly got it. The creature wasn't here to win. It was here to stall, buying time to grow even stronger. He desperately barks for one more ally, and the samurai ogre storms in to join the Chaos Powerhouse warrior, leading the charge with his katana already drawn, answering his master's call. Razgris Rex slams into the fight because that ogre isn't the real target, right? As a devastating blow is about to hit the party, he rips out a frantic shout, begging his companions to dive for cover before it's too late. Scrambling behind a brand new wall of rock and debris, the female warrior stares at the blocked path and fires off. So what now? While he can only choke out that for the moment. Yeah, they're trapped. Your gaze snaps back to the fight. Razgris Rex is swallowed by a blinding burst of energy. He tightens his grip on his card and realizes he's not out of moves yet. One trump card remains. The exact reason Razgris Rex was built to survive at least one hit like this. He whips around to his companions and lays out his plan, holding up the Demon's Dragoon card and pointing out how tough it is to kill. His reality, there are way too many unknowns to trust it by itself. The female mage stays quiet, but the blame lands on her shoulders. That word detonates in her. She's kneeling in the rubble. And the female warrior bursts out in regret, crying that she charged forward alone, so she couldn't save anyone, and turned into dead weight for the whole group. Tears stream down her face as she blurts out apology after apology, gripping the truth she failed to protect her master. And every choice she made burns her with shame. While she chokes back tears, the female mage whips her gaze to Sosaku and calmly taps the truth into him. When that warrior lunged forward, he couldn't back it up, so maybe his earlier words landed a little too sharp. As he weighed their options, the female mage blurted out a desperate plan, saying the floor boss's self-destruction was its final trick. Yet it would also drain the monster's magic dry, and that meant this was their best shot. Maybe the only one. With her nerves finally back under control, the female warrior chimed in. If they could slam one perfect knockout hit, just as the creature ran out of magic and braced for its self-destruct, they could win. Then the mage snapped her focus straight onto Sosaku, telling him to fall in line so they could drain the boss's power, and he balked. Who else could even land a final hit that strong? He swore he had no tricks left, but the mage just pointed at him and proved he was wrong. His demeanor snapped into place in an instant, dark, locked-in eyes that said, "I've got this." So he took the role without hesitation. Then he vowed they'd drain the boss's magic dry, pointed the way, and ordered his unseen monster. Hit it once. One strike and it's over. With the command roaring through the sealed chamber, a brutal surge of magical energy exploded forward as the whole party watched, stunned. A swirling surge of power tore the air open, and Demon's Dragoon's armored beast started to form, crackling with raw, violent force. Sosaku Kamafuda stood on the threshold of the boss's chamber, watching those ogres get pinned down, guarded on both sides by the female warrior and the female mage. Then he steadied his breathing, drew himself together, and snapped. It's time. As behind him, the samurai ogre and the Demon's Dragoon crashed into the enemy horde. The female mage snaps her focus to the real danger and spells it out. Her readings pinpoint the floor boss. Razgris Rex hammers you with two kinds of attacks, and out in the cavern's far distance, the female warrior stands alone, staring down a towering, crackling electric monster. Right on cue, the beast snaps into its first pattern, then blasts a wild, far-reaching storm of electricity that crawls over the battlefield, and the female mage instantly calls it out as a diffusion attack. With a strong but steady hit rate, she keeps laying out her strategy, telling everyone straight up, yeah, the female warrior can get hit, but charging through alone won't happen. So she steps in with her plan and promises backup, using a deadly combo of terraforming and earth-tide magic. With a single command, the ground explodes. Solid earth surges up into a massive, unbreakable wall, slamming straight into the electrical storm like a fortress shield. And behind it, the female warrior digs in, ready for the hit that's about to smash down. Lightning rips through the sky and hammers a brutal earthen wall, and the rock soaks up every violent hit, quaking as that raw power rips through it. The female mage watches the result like a hawk, calling it out if the tax-proof plan fails. The creature will flip tactics. Then she tests her defensive magic, and when it proves the perfect counter, it snaps the enemy into the move she wants. Like she predicted, Razgris Rex bunches all its power into one deadly point and fires a razor-sharp beam that rips through everything so when her shield can't hold. The female mage screams, "I'm counting on you, Chaco," and the female warrior instantly rockets off the ground, leaping straight toward the demon's Drago. She dove downward, her blade crackling with raw energy. And even with that fierce look on her face, one panicked thought screamed in her head. This plan is insane, a desperate gamble. But it's the only one she's got. Saku Kamafuda stared as the plan played out. He'd figured out the floor boss moved based on what it thought was dangerous. So he tricked it into thinking the diffusion attack was useless and baited it into firing off the concentrated move. They figured if they could keep that creature firing off its brutal, high-cost magic, its reserves would run dry. Then Razgris Rex, the electrical beast, whipped its head around like it couldn't resist the bait. The warrior's blade landed clean, but right when it mattered most. The attack choked to a stop against the creature's body, and all that power fizzled out into nothing. Sosaka gaped in disbelief as the female mage's strained voice cracked. She'd realized her magic was about to run dry, right on cue with what her summoner feared. She jerked her gaze upward in sheer horror. Did their assault really drain its magic? And right there, her worst fear confirmed. Razgris Rex was still roaring with power, crackling with energy like it hadn't even been touched. Before she could even catch her breath, her worst fears clicked into place. This wasn't just moving around, it was gearing up for another attack, and two sizzling spheres of raw electrical energy burst to life in its claws. The whole party froze as that sight tore through them with pure shock. "Back!" the female warrior screamed, lunging into position by the beast. The female mage stared, and her thoughts blitzed like lightning because she'd been so sure the creature only had two moves, diffusion and concentration. But this was something she'd never seen before. The creature they faced tore into them, unleashing a three-part wall of concentrated energy that snapped and crackled through the air like lightning. Seeing it, the female mage snapped into realization and blurted, "We messed up, change the plan," to the female warrior, who spun around with shock written all over her face. Her companions snapped into action at once, and Saku demanded answers. "What are you doing?" The female mage didn't even blink. With grim resolve on her face, she insisted an assault this massive had to be burning through the creature's magic, even after the mage judged it hopeless. The female warrior stepped up like a lightning strike, roaring that she'd be the one to bring that beast down. So Sako, stunned out of his wits, demanded how she could possibly pull it off. She spilled her last-ditch plan using her acceleration ability for just 1 second, only in her arm, right as she swung her blade. Sosaka grilled her, asking if that was even possible, and she swallowed hard and admitted she'd never tried it before. But with no other option left, she had to gamble everything. When she tried to pull off the move, a sharp cry tore out of her. She couldn't swing that massive greatsword, not even with all the strength she had. She strained and shook under the weapon's crushing weight, and when the female mage saw her barely holding on, she snapped, "Hang in there," then started charging dark magic. The mage snapped her spell into place and told the warrior she'd used her magic to mend both the sword and her hand, right back where they belonged. Now steady again. The warrior stared her down and admitted how brutally hard it was. Acceleration was built for big, sweeping motions, not for squeezing that same power into the tiniest movement of her arm. But she didn't crack. She vowed she'd keep going and told the mage she was counting on her. She squared her shoulders because there was no other way, only one path in her head. A flawless strike with the wild beast's speed and flexibility, the only way it could work. As she locked onto the electric entity, it exploded forward in a fierce lunge, smashing into her with a roaring storm of pure power. She crashed straight into its charge, poured every ounce of power into one brutal word, acceleration, and her blade screamed into the sky as a streak of pure light cutting through the air at an impossible speed. Blade screamed through the air, unleashing a relentless storm of strikes meant to rip straight into the creature's core. Her attack landed, boom, slamming the entity with raw, explosive force. With every ounce of strength left, the female mage whipped her gaze to Sosaku, jaw tight, nerves screaming, and said, "Sosaku, I'm trusting you with everything." Razgru's Rex crackles with pure, contained electricity, and its strike lands from the ground right as the female warrior snatches the moment, screams for Sosaku, and shouts that this is it, their time to strike. He bursts out that if this creature's mana drain is the reason they've stopped, then this is their one shot to strike, and he doesn't have time to waste. She begs him to move before the dragon self-destructs, but Saku still won't budge, eyes locked on the card in his hand. He's locked on the card, and one question keeps slamming through his head. Horror creeps across the female warrior's face as she hesitates, then she calls his name again, voice sharpening with dread, asking out loud if his plan was to smash the creature right before it could tear itself apart. As it speaks, the electric entity erupts into blinding light, and that glow instantly kicks off its self-destruction countdown. The duel shoves terror into the female warrior's chest. She shrieks, "Get out of here! A massive explosion is about to hit," and screams at everyone to run or they'll die. Even with Sosuko begging her, he just stands his ground, face tightening with iron resolve. He tells her it's not finished and swears he'll hang on until the very last moment. Right then, the creature's energy explodes into a brutal, cataclysmic blast, swallowing the whole area in a blinding storm of force and light. A cataclysmic explosion tears through the chamber, but the shockwave splits as a huge black rectangular shield stays unshaken in the hands of the female mage and the female warrior while behind them. Sosaku Kamafuda stands there untouched as debris gets violently flung aside. The shield wasn't a shield at all. It was the summon itself. Demon's Dragoon just stood there, unshaken, as the explosion's light faded, its armored body untouched by all that raw power. As the dust finally settles, the female mage stares into the emptiness where the electric entity used to be, then sighs, "Yeah, they stopped the self-destruction, but their plans still blew up in their faces," and she warns that the floor boss will just revive again, because its rebirth and its self-destruction are really the same trick played twice. She stays calm and tells her, "Don't worry." But then her partner snaps back, panicked, saying they've got to take it down before the self-destruct sequence kicks in, and they're in an even worse mess than before. So Saku just gives Demon's Dragoon a quiet, grateful nod. A brilliant burst of light erupts in the chamber so clear it screams one thing: Saku's been steering this from the start, and that floor boss isn't getting any worse than this. That showdown was a brutal gamble. Razgru's Rex, the electric entity, blasted out its full power and slammed it straight into the unbreakable Demon's Dragoons. His companions just gawk in disbelief, because the female warrior can't even find words, and the female mage spots it right away. The floor boss's form has totally changed. Then he starts laying out every nasty detail of his gambit, confirming that this is exactly what the creature looked like right after its first revival. So he fires back. "So what do you think is going on? A power drop?" And the truth hits hard. Demon's Dragoon's main ability isn't offense at all, it's raw destruction resistance. He stared at the insane risk he'd just gambled his life on the Dragoon's turn. He triggered was brand new, untested, And in this world, nobody knew if it would even work, because in the game it only took seconds, but here it was pure guesswork. If that thing struck first before the self-destruct finished, it wasn't a loss, it was total annihilation. Just for that reason, he called his creature up right before the self-destruction, so the damage-resistant shield would kick in at the exact moment everything went down. The warrior's companion froze in disbelief, blurting that the floor boss had suddenly been weakened. So she demanded answers on how. Demon's Dragoon explained that the mismatch between the game's rules and reality had cracked an opening, and now they could unlock and explore it with a whole new ability. As it spoke, Demon's Dragoon erupted in blinding light, its whole body crackling with raw, unstoppable power. The warrior and the mage shrieked in alarm as the magic force hit like a tidal wave. Sosaku snapped that this was the Dragoon's second ability. If the extra damage from its first power didn't finish the boss, it would just drink the enemy's leftover magic straight up. He kept going, laying out how the floor boss gets reborn and turbocharged after it wipes itself out like a trap card. When it's destroyed, it blasts every other monster on the field. And if you cough up the exact magic cost, you summon it back with its power cranked up way past normal. He told them he'd already cracked the revival cost with magic crystals. And the wild part was, those same crystals could be used to foot the bill for its power. With a fierce shout, he announced his plan. He'd rip the boss's own magic, the stuff he'd taken and fused into his Dragoon, and turn it right back on it, and his companions finally got it. The whole brutal genius of his strategy. He kept talking, laying out the boss's revival secret. If you smashed the magic crystals, it could come back stronger, but if it had to drink its own magic to revive, it would come back badly weakened. And that's exactly the opening he seized, because now Demon's Dragoon was holding the boss's very essence in its grip, with his plan ripped wide open. He shouted that it was time to go full throttle, ordering his partner to devour and burn everything as a raging vortex of unimaginable power started forming right inside Demon's Dragoon's chest. His voice shattered the air as he bellowed the order. Demon's Dragoon, strike! He thrust his hand forward and, with one last savage cry, unleashed a devastating surge of unlimited judgment. Un colosal rayo de energía estala contra la entidad electriza. Raskish rex, y su cuerpo se retuerce a lo bestia antes de hacerse añicos bajo una presión brutal. El impacto estalla con una fuerza bruta y crea un remolino de poder prudo que abre una zanja gigante en el suelo y luego se dispara hatiri, rugiendo como un estallido. Todo se desgarra en un seguidor estallido de luz blanca, arrasa con la caverna y te deja sin visión por completo. Desde una distancia segura. La guerrera y la maga solo logran quedarse clavadas mirando, con la cara marcada por la conmoción ante esa muestra de poder que aplasta. La maga se gira hacia el saco Camofuda y le suelta la pregunta. ¿De verdad va a revivir? Camofuda asiente, confirmando su sospecha. La magia que necesita para resucitar, ya se acabó. El cuerpo de su compañero tocó fondo, y con una satisfacción helada, remata que su cálculo era justo porque detrás a la silueta parpadea de rascris empieza a decir. Convertía do perchas de que de mira con atención como la energía de la criatura se arremolina y se desvanece. Luego, con la mano extendida hacia esa esacia que se escapa, aparece en su palma una esfera luminosa de luz pura. Su mano se lanza al aire, anda yugur de un orbe. Ya aprieta una sola carta, la del fénix de plasma. Sus compañeras la miran desde atrás, y él proclama con todo el pecho la derrota del jefe de pistola. La escena cambia y los amigos de Sosaku se quedan helados mirándolo, con la boca abierta. Uno le suelta una pregunta llena de incredulidad. ¿De verdad venciste al jefe de piso? Sosaku aprieta la carta, levanta la mano con ese señal de paz, y solo sonríe. confermando que es el somira totalmente, riosamente rehuesomuete real totalmente real. De repente retrocede, a gritos, con un dolor punzante clavándole ojo. La guerrera lo encara, alarmada, exigiendo que le diga qué le pasa. Luego suelta la verdad. El jefe del primer piso se cayó ante ella, por obra de Sohizan. Mientras se agarra la cara, un nuevo símbolo, oscuro y complicado, brota en el dorso de su mano. La marca que confirma que ella es el señor de la mazmorra. La maga se inclina y le ve suelta que la marca es una sola vaina, un símbolo de entendimiento, y le advierte, no intentes descifrarla todavía, porque si lo haces mientras te arde ese dolor, te va a tumbar. Cuando el dolor empieza a desvanecerse, una voz le suelta un cumplido y la promete que, desde hoy es un señor de la mazmorra, y esa marca queda grabada para siempre en su piel, como si fuera parte de él. Yen entrecerró los ojos o sintió como el peso de su nuevo título lo aplastaba. Se preguntó en voz baja, si de verdad era real. Yo el señor de la mazmorra. Antes de que pudiera reaccionar, la guerrera se lanzó como un rayo sobre él, con la cara endurecida como una máscara de determinación, y le gritó que le diera el ojo. Acelera y corta la distancia, gritando que derrotar al nuevo señor de la mazmorra es su próximo objetivo. Por el resurgimiento de su clan, jura que será el sacrificio para su durandal, y que el resto de vosotras alda se entere. Este el verdadero comienzo, y, justo cuando iba a lanzarse al ataque, Sasaku se esfumó en un destello de luz. Sosaku dio un paso atrás, totalmente impactado, y la maga se quedaron mirando ese vacío, porque los dos reconocieron al instante las señales más claras de una magia de teletransportación. Ya sus compañeras son arrolladas de golpe e un claro del bosque. Una pesadas extraña se le hunde encima mientras mira alrededor, pensando, nos trajeron de vuelta a la superficie. Mientras la maga se agarra la cabeza y grita de dolor, explica que los expusieron, con el nombramiento de un nuevo maestro, hasta la estructura de la mazmorra se reacomodó. Sosaku se queda helado al descubrir que el tilo de señor de la mazmorra es morcísimo, mas te refienta, repere escóndola, y arede te heberido escóndola. Sus pensamientos se rompen en pedazos al ver un bol coloso que aplasta el paisaje, y a la guerrera sentencia que con la legada de un destructor la mazmorra por fin enseñó su verdadera cara. Esa enorme, a bol laberinto, es su símbolo. El mundo entero presenciará el nacimiento del tercer laberinto divino. Mientras contempla aquella inmensa estructura, la guerrera suelta más detalles. El árbol laberinto actúa como un faro, una proclamación en voz alta, para que todos sepan que el primer piso ya fue conquistado. Y en otra parte, la aparición del árbol cae como un golpe, un hombre brutal, con la cabeza de un jabalí. Se queda helado preguntando qué demonios está mirando. Mientras una chica de pupilas con forma de estrella lo señala al instante y grita que es una amenaza directa, su vida desde otro rincón, un gaere, encapuchado con una lanza en la mano y un escudo al frente, fija la mirada en él. Maraboli no puede evitar preguntarse, ¿de verdad ya nació un laberinto nuevo, con los ojos de estrella Ella hairev de furia justiera y grita que la hermosa tierra de la diosa fue profanada por un pecador al que lama hero dijero lama hero. Jura que ese villano merece, juró que ese villano merece. Jura que esa villano merece pulverizará.